All right, welcome to the Inspired Yogi. Today we were with Eileen and she's all about lifelong well-being, including being free from chronic pain. I'm so excited about this topic. I'm 62 years old. I've got some chronic pain issues going on, and I'm all about lifelong well-being. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and hoping that we're able to share some really good stuff that makes people's lives a little better.
I hope so. It's this show's all about making people's life better and uh, you know minimizing or lowering suffering in the world. So this is a
Yes.
great
Yeah,
topic.
yeah. My mission is to erase pain from the world. I
I
know I
love
need
it.
a really big eraser. So,
Yeah, you want to share a little bit about your credentials?
sure. I am a licensed physical therapist. I have been practicing for over 30 years. I don't really practice conventionally, and what I mean by that is I'm not in one of those, thank God. I'm not in one of those clinics where, you're herding people in and out like with cattle prods, three, four people an hour. My training extensively for the first half of my profession was all manual techniques. I was pretty addicted. The more techniques I learned, the more people I could help. So I'm trained in dozens of different techniques. And I learned right out of the gate that wherever the pain is often not where the problem is that's causing it. And so, I was really, really blessed to study under some of the most brilliant minds when it comes to addressing the human body and pain. And it wasn't just the physical therapy profession. There are a lot of professions out there that are really good at helping people with pain, and sometimes better than PT, unfortunately. And then the last half of my profession, I have really focused on becoming skilled at teaching people how to fix themselves. And so I've got these modalities, I call it the holy grail of movement training, that teaches people how everything is connected, how we can address the human body in a way that's authentic, because so much of the fitness industry, the workout world, is doing things that is causing probably more harm than good in the way that people are training their bodies. It's not authentic. It's nothing we would do in real life. And the body's kind of like, what are you doing to me? That's not how I work. And so I find it so rewarding when, just before we came on here to record this episode, I worked with someone who's in her 40s who had some pretty severe back pain issues flare up. And just after having met with her once, her pain is like 98% better. She was able to go dancing with a friend, but she's doing the right things and she's doing them the right way. And most of what I teach, I'm not all that brilliant. I'm just really gifted at finding brilliant people and learning what they know and then sharing it with the world, because most of the really brilliant people aren't teaching the general public. And so a lot of what I know is not mainstream knowledge, but it really needs to be. So that's why I'm here. And thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I'm thrilled and I'm excited about it and I want to hear more. So you're saying you rely on experts that aren't really getting this information out there. So okay, like I'll use myself for example. I'm a pickleball player. Um, in 2019, I completely tore three ligaments in my right shoulder. And I stopped for a month or two, played left-handed during that time, but I've been playing through pain pretty much since then to the point where it got to be so bad I had to stop playing right-handed again. Um, so I come to see you. What would that go like?
Yeah. Well, first I would want to find out your history. I want to know, any surgeries you had, any other injuries. What is your vocation, your occupation? What do you spend your time doing? How active are you? Inactive are you? And I want to know injuries. I don't care if it was 20 years ago and it was a sprained ankle, because everything is connected to everything else. And so I need a really thorough history. I also need to know what medications you're taking, because a lot of medications will create pain as a side effect, and we don't want to be chasing our tail. I also want to be sure that I understand what foods you're putting in your mouth, because how we nourish our body is important. Do you hydrate well? So I get a very thorough history of people before I do private consulting. I do have online programs that doesn't require all of that, by the way, for people who want to just kind of dip their toe in the water. But but I would get all of that. And I also would be very curious, how did you tear three ligaments? I mean, were you climbing a wall and you fell, you hung? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, I was mountain biking rather aggressively. Um, the front tire popped off. I don't know if the fork broke or it came disconnected. I don't know, but I went head over heels over the handlebars, almost landed on my head, but threw my head to the left at the last second, landed right on top of the shoulder. I wasn't even, I'm not big on allopathic medicine. I wasn't even going to go have it looked at because I just assumed I broke my collarbone. But after I got home and really felt my collarbone, I'm like, there's no break there. Something else is going on. So they x-rayed it, sent me to a specialist. He goes, this is a common, extreme sport injury. Athletes sometimes do get surgery on this, but it usually doesn't go well. So we recommend just living with it and therapy.
Okay.
Weirdly enough, they didn't send me to any type of therapy. But I've been a yoga instructor for a long time, so I did my own PT and got back to full range of motion, no pain,
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
minimal pain. You expect a little bit after those three tears for a
Good,
long
good.
time.
Okay. So here is where I would, and I like this. I love how you're creating this scenario so people can understand how everything's connected. So, yes, you had a direct impact injury to the shoulder. However, when that force enters the body when you hit something hard, there are other areas of the body that can be impacted as well, not just the area that's really got the acute injury initially. And so we would want to make sure those other areas are functioning correctly. Now, the shoulder, a lot of people want to just kind of beat up the rotator cuff, which is it's like nails on a chalkboard to me, because the rotator cuff muscles are just designed to keep the joint stable. They're not designed for pushing, pulling, lifting, power work. They don't do the work. And so why are we always trying to make them stronger? It's kind of like, you got this big gorilla and you got this little tiny baby, and you're asking the baby to do the lifting. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. So, there's 18 muscles that directly impact the function of the shoulder, of which only four are the rotator cuff. We need to work on the other 14, but we also have to understand that your shoulder very much depends on your pelvis, even your ankles. If you're doing any kind of a swinging sport, any kind of sport, well, like pickleball or tennis or baseball or frisbee, I mean, any kind of a swinging sport, golf requires the ankle to do more motion than any other sport on the planet. So people don't realize how much everything's connected. And so if you're swinging, it's not just your shoulder that you're counting on. You've got to make sure that your ankles are moving correctly. And I don't know if you've got any history of ankle issues,
Nope.
but that is huge. We still assess them because you may not be aware that you've got an ankle that's not everting or inverting or not supinating correctly, that kind of thing. So we make sure the ankles are working right. And then we move up the chain. How are the hips working? Because it requires a lot of internal, external rotation with the hips, because a lot of the power with the swing is happening in the hips. And so we've got to make sure that's happening. We also have to make sure that your trunk is fully rotating. The trunk is kind of like the silent saboteur, where it doesn't have any symptoms, it doesn't complain, but it's causing all the problems. It's kind of like that little brother that loves to tease the big brother, and he's quiet, so nobody knows he's causing all the trouble. So we have to make sure, because the trunk, it's kind of like, I'm showing my age, but Ginsu knives, it sort of does it all. It flexes forward, it extends back, it side bends, it rotates. And if it's lacking any of that, the shoulder is going to take the brunt. So we need to see you as a whole body. And so when you're only rehabbing the shoulder, and you didn't seek out therapy, but they would have seen you as a shoulder that walks in the door. And so
Hmm.
they would have just been focusing on the shoulder anyway, more often than not, unless you lucked out and found somebody who does understand the whole body connection. But and it sounds like, oh my gosh, you're going to be in therapy for 6 months and you're going to have 45,000 exercises. It's not true, because it's really those three big rocks, the ankles, hips, and trunk, that you make sure they're working right. And the majority of the homework that you do works all three of those areas at the same time with the movements that you're performing. So it's really not this. I mean, I can assess somebody's three plane motion in about 20 minutes, and then whatever homework I give them based on what we observe might take them 15 minutes, and as we progress, depending on what's going on, you might be up to a half hour. But it when you're finding the culprit, which is why I titled my first book Pain Culprits, when you're finding the culprit, you're not beating up the victim. Your shoulder's the victim.
Hmm.
We have to make sure the culprit's not getting off scot-free.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Could there not be a culprit, and could it be just issues with the shoulder?
There can be, sometimes there's structural issues. So, I mean, if there's a labrum tear, if there's, if the, for whatever reasons, because the glenoid fossa is very shallow. So when that humeral head, sits there, that's what the rotator cuff's job is to make sure that it stays where it belongs when you're moving the arm. You do want to make sure that things are aligned properly, those kind of things. But bone really is the slave of muscle.
Yeah.
And so it's really training the muscles to do the right job the right way that helps the bones to move properly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I'm also curious, you went from ankles to hips and skipped the knees. Is there any reason for that?
Yeah, 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 you're sharp. So the knees are a very simple hinge joint.
Yeah.
Now they do have a little side motion, a little rotation, very little, which is why so many athletes destroy their ACLs because that's rotation that's lacking. And usually that's not training their ankles properly unless it's a direct impact. So what happens is because the knees are just a simple hinge joint, they're stuck between the ankle and the hip with no place to go. So 99% of the time, unless that person is bone on bone or they had a really serious injury, crush injury, or something else going on, it's not the knee.
Okay.
It's the ankles below or it's the hips above.
Okay. That
It's
makes sense.
almost never the knee.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of the times people have chronic knee issues and it never gets better
Hmm.
because everybody they seek out is treating the knee. Again,
Yeah.
they see them as a body part that walks through the door. They're
Yeah.
not looking below or above. And I think this is important for your audience to hear. In my profession, a lot of the times you'll go to someone and because they haven't been trained in the connection. And PTs they can be worlds apart. You can work with a PT who specializes in wheelchair fitting or specializes in hand treatment or so depending on who you go to, they may or may not be able to help you with the problem you have. They have an entry level knowledge when they graduate from college, but anything that they do after that is going to determine their success with certain issues or not. And so you can see somebody who doesn't understand the connection at all. You also can hear, oh, I'm not here to look, you might say, well, can you check and make sure my ankle's working or my hip's working because you heard me talk today? And
Hmm.
they might tell you, oh, you're here for your knee. I can't look at your ankle. I can't look at your hip. Now, I can tell you a couple of reasons why this happens, and I think it's very important for people to understand this. Depending on the insurance you're using, the insurance may refuse to pay for the visit if the person treats a body part that's not on the prescription. So it depends on the insurance. And the two biggies is Medicare and workers' compensation. But if you are a skilled clinician, you can document with complete accuracy, but not raise a red flag that you're working the wrong body part because you can name muscles, you can name attachments. And so you're not saying if somebody came in with a shoulder problem and the low back has a torsion, and that torsion is yanking the lat dorsi, which is depressing the shoulder so that every time you raise your arm overhead, it's out of position. We have to correct the torsion, calm down the lat dorsi. Now the shoulder is going to be aligned properly, and now you can abduct with no pain.
Hmm.
If I document I treated the low back, it could be a red flag if it's Medicare or workers' compensation. But if I document I'm treating the latissimus dorsi's origin, unless they're an anatomy expert, they have no clue what I did. But I'm accurate in my documentation. I'm not
Yeah.
making anything up. I'm not misrepresenting. So, and then also you've got PTs out there who think that they can't work a different body part when you're there. And this is a misunderstanding because the Physical Therapy Practice Act, now I haven't looked at every single state because we're licensed by state. And now we've got some multi-state licensing that's available now. But you sometimes it's a misunderstanding. They think they can't. But the Physical Therapy Practice Act says that you can provide whatever plan of care you believe will resolve the problem. So my looking at your low back, my looking at your ankle, my looking at your hips, my looking at your trunk is not like against the law. I'm not doing anything that I shouldn't be doing. Yeah.
Now, when you say the trunk, are you talking about the whole spinal column? Because obviously there's nerves up in the neck that are going down to the shoulder. So if you have a bulging disc or something like that impinging on a nerve, you could obviously get shoulder pain. So are you
Right.
including
So
that in the
yeah,
trunk?
trunk, I'm talking mainly thoracic spine between the
Okay.
neck and the low back. That
Okay.
tends to be the biggest culprit. Now, neck, cervical spine, that counts on everything below to be functioning correctly.
Yeah.
So if there's anything going on below, that can definitely aggravate the neck. I can tell you that even bulging discs, now this is the interesting part that I think you're going to enjoy learning this. A lot of the data is showing that there are a lot of people out there with bulging discs who have no symptoms whatsoever.
Mm.
There are also a lot of people out there who have symptoms and no bulging discs and anywhere in between. So the important thing for us to understand is just because a bulging disc shows up on imaging, it doesn't mean that's the cause of the pain or the problem. Now, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If somebody is, they're dropping stuff because of nerve compression, now it's time to let's take this serious. But if it's just pain down the arm, there could just be some compression going on in the scalenes of the neck. There
Mhm.
could be some compression going on in the brachial plexus, which is where you've got all those nerves. That's why when you use crutches, you're not supposed to put your armpits down on the crutches because you're going to cause nerve damage. So it can be happening, in several places. And but if you see a bulging disc in the neck and you just assume, oh, that must be it, and then you're treating that, God forbid the person even has surgery, but it wasn't the culprit. So
Yeah.
you have to be sure that what you're treating is actually the culprit.
Yeah. And speaking of surgery, I was really amazed that the specialist I went to see didn't recommend surgery because yeah, I've been in the medical field now for quite a while and as a registered nurse, and it seems like doctors always want to do surgery.
Mm,
It's like, oh, let's, rushing to surgery before finding any root cause solutions. So I was really
mhm.
surprised and really glad they didn't recommend surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And of course you would have had the choice of getting another opinion. And,
Yeah.
some people think they can't say no to a doctor, which kind of scares me a little.
Yeah.
We do have a right to say no,
And
and get
other
all of
people I
our,
find are just whatever the doctor says is gold. That just blows my mind. Like,
yes, yes. And there's a reason they call it a medical opinion. You can go to three different doctors and get three different opinions. So it's important to make sure that I always tell people you don't have to be a medical expert. You just have to know the question to ask, which is what are the benefits that this will provide to me? And what are the risks I can experience? And
mhm.
then it's like a pro and con list. And then you can make a more informed decision for yourself. But I know a lot of people who came into a clinic setting who said, wish I knew then what I know now because I would have never agreed to that. That medication, that procedure, that surgery, because they're still dealing with fallout sometimes years later. So
Sure,
it is important to be informed before you agree to something.
sure. Okay, so let's say that you found out there's an issue in my trunk behind my shoulder blade in that area that's causing muscle problems going into my shoulder and that's causing all the pain because I
Hmm.
have been able to I had a guest on that teaches myofascial release with soft
Hmm.
pressure and I've been using those techniques and getting muscle release in my shoulder which has helped with pain because a lot of the pain is coming from over tightness. So if it is in the trunk, let's say, what's your next approach to relieving that pain?
Yeah, so I like how you said over tightness. So if there's a lot of tension, that's
Mhm.
the body's desire to protect an area that's not fully functioning.
Yeah.
Sometimes the lack of mobility has to do with the fact that the muscles are not wanting to let go. They're
Mhm.
trying to protect something. Fascia does kind of hold on to past injuries.
Yeah.
And, like people who were in a really serious accident sitting and then they just can't sit without pain. It's the body like screaming, let's not sit. Last time we sat, we got in a lot of trouble. So, there's that. But as far as mobilizing because there's lack of motion, what I think lacks a lot in the mainstream narrative of exercises and training is a lot of the times three plane motion is not included. We're doing a lot of our exercises in one plane of motion. And the human body moves forward and back, sideways, and it rotates.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure we're accessing all three planes of motion when we're storing a body part to proper function. Another thing is making sure that the movements we do are actually authentic. A lot of the times when people go to train their body parts, they're isolating them. So they're saying, okay, I have to make sure I keep everything stiff and I only lift my arm like this because I want to build my anterior delt. And I don't want to use any other body part because I'm isolating that so it can hypertrophy, it can get big and it can get strong. Well, unfortunately, the brain's up there going, "What are you doing? How come you're not letting anybody help?" Because the body's designed to work as a team no matter what we're doing. And I explain it this way, which tends to be easier for people to absorb. If I go to lift a heavy bag of groceries off the kitchen table, I'm not going to keep my elbows at 90 degrees and make sure that only my biceps are used and just keep everything else stiff and only work the bicep. I'm going to squat down so that I'm now loading my power source, which is max, gluteus maximus. I call him max. So you want to load the power source. You're going to lean forward, pick up that bag, bring it close to you because it's heavy. And then you're going to push through the floor with your feet to come back up to standing. So you just used your entire body to pick up that bag of groceries. Yet when we go to the gym, we only allow one muscle at a time to do an exercise. And so we risk tendonitis, tendinosis, tendinopathy. It's not healthy. So when you go to train for your shoulder, even with the thoracic spine work, the trunk work, you're going to involve the whole body. And so there's beautiful movements that you can do. The trunk has a type 1 and type 2 motion to it. And it's very simple to understand. The type 1 motion is opposite, which means if I rotate to the right, I side bend to the left. That's opposite. Or if I rotate left, I side bend right. That's opposite. So you would want to be training in those motions. There's also type 2 motion, which is the same, which means if I rotate right, I side bend right, and vice versa. So you want to make sure you're training in both type 1 and type 2 motions. And you can do what I call driving the motion from different body parts. So for instance, you could pre-position in rotation and side bending, and I show people how to do this using a doorway or something. And then you can drive the motion with the pelvis. So what that does is, because your hands are pre-positioned, the scapula, the shoulder blades, the angel wings, some people call them, are going to do this beautiful glide on the rib wall because the arms are pre-positioned and the pelvis is driving. So you're going to do that in all three planes of motion. And it's going to really help to improve the shoulder mobility, the function. And, motion's lotion. You get this beautiful fluid fill effect, this pumping action that happens when you're doing things in repetition that don't cause pain. A lot of the times people think, oh, it's going to hurt when I do it, but I just have to bite the bullet. No. What happens is the brain tells you, oh, you're not smart enough to keep from hurting us, so I'm going to have to stop you somehow. And so what'll happen is the brain will say, oh, that hurts. So let's try side bending. Let's try twisting. Let's try getting in this funky position. Okay, that feels better. So now you're literally training in dysfunction because your brain is cheating, trying to stop the pain from happening. So, and I know there are people who say, physical therapy stands for, pain and torture. Not really. Now, if somebody just had a total knee replacement and they got to start walking on it, that's going to hurt like crazy.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when you're rehabbing something, you do not want the pain to be occurring repetitively because the brain is going to cheat and it's not going to tell you it's cheating. So you want every movement to be what I call successful, where you feel confident and competent in the movement, and then you build on that. It's kind of like handing a toddler a little, 4-ounce plastic hammer. And then when he gets used to that and he gets a little stronger and a little bigger, now you can hand him a hammer that's 8 ounces, and you can just keep increasing. But he's got to be successful with it first. You can't hand him a 10-pound hammer and expect him to use it. So that's how the body works. And I cannot tell you how many people have told me, when I finally listened to you and I did those exercises and I made sure they didn't hurt, I got better. So it does work. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So what I'm hearing is like, I talk to a lot of people and they're doing Reiki, myofascial release, all these different techniques to get rid of chronic pain, energy work, blah, blah, blah. But you're using primarily motion in
Mm-hmm.
different ways and
Mm-hmm.
getting the body to respond and to release, like we talked about before, the muscle tension. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to prevent the body from going into that pain signal. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And now there are other self-care methods I do teach that will address the neurofascial system, that will address any asymmetry, which means if one side of the body is working a lot better than the other side, we
Mhm.
kind of do this fake out move where you work the yummy part and the yucky part starts to improve. It's fascinating because there's this crossover that occurs.
Tell me more
So
about that.
there are some pretty intriguing, brilliant people out there who have
Yeah.
developed some really cool stuff that you can learn. But for the most part, you've got to make sure the body's moving correctly. And I tell people all those other things that you said, they have their place. They can be an adjunct. But there is no person on the planet who can put their hands on you and cause your muscles to perform better.
Yeah.
The only one that can do that is you, because you have to do the movement to develop the ability. Nobody else can do that for you. And if you're not doing it correctly, or you think you know this is going to work, but it's not, somebody else isn't going to be able to fix that. Now, yes, like I said, the first half of my career, I put my hands on people and I did muscle energy techniques, strain into counter strain, Mulligan's mobilization with movement, McKenzie's method. I mean, I can name a whole bunch of stuff. And
Hmm.
it worked really well and it helped a lot of people. But I didn't know that holy grail of three plane authentic training that I could really get people to fix themselves. And that's why I find this so exciting.
I
Yeah.
love that. Now, we're kind of in fast food America. I just want a pill to get better. How is the response from your clients? Because obviously this is work. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't just do these exercises once and retrain your body.
Yeah.
You're going to have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
retrain your brain basically and the body movement and the
Yeah.
muscles. So
That's
what
a
kind of
that's a
response?
really good question. Yeah, we do live in the land of instant gratification.
Yes.
So here's what I find. When someone is dealing with chronic pain, they want to get better.
Hmm.
They're kind of desperate and they're kind of willing to do anything. The really amazing part about training this way is it feels so stinking good to do it. And when people realize that, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people, oh my gosh, that makes such sense. Yeah, that makes such sense. So when you explain to somebody why they're doing something, like I had a football quarterback, 22 years old, rock solid muscle from nose to toes, who came in with a diagnosis of shoulder tendonitis and elbow tendonitis. They doubled the diagnosis. And he would get the pain when he was doing his practice throws. And so I'm assessing his shoulder. I mean, he had so much strength I could have hung on his arm. He had full range of motion. There was nothing wrong with that shoulder. So I said, "Show me what happens when you throw a football," because that's what the pain would start after a bit of a practice. If he had a 3 hour three-man throw practice, he couldn't finish because of the pain. So I asked him, "Show me how you throw a football." So I watched him and I saw that his ankle was completely unstable. And I said, "Okay, how often have you injured that ankle?" And he said, "Oh, I'll roll out on it during practice and I have to walk off the pain." So, of course, inside I'm screaming, why is his coach and his trainer allowing him to play on such an unstable ankle? But I guess they figured the quarterback, I guess his ankles aren't important as long as he can throw the ball.
We'll
I don't
wrap
know.
it. Give them some Novocaine.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that topic. But all we did was we spent 3 or 4 sessions giving him movement to improve the stability of his ankle.
Hmm.
He could do all the practice he wanted with no more shoulder pain.
That's fascinating.
Because what happens is, and I'll explain it to everybody so they're not like, that's voodoo, that doesn't make sense. If you go to release the football and you've got that foot in front of you and that foot's unstable, what's going to happen is the foot is not going to stop the motion at the right time. So you're going to go past the motion that's optimal before you release the ball. So every time he threw the ball, his shoulder was getting yanked, yanked, yanked abnormally. And over time, it was irritating the structures and he couldn't finish the 3 hour practice. But once that ankle was stable and it controlled the motion so that when he released the ball, it was at the right time, no more shoulder problems. So this is why it's important to understand how everything's connected, because I could have been a conventional PT and done some ultrasound on his shoulder and done some hot pack and some ice pack and gave him some stretches, which would have been completely useless.
Some
So
pain pills.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but most people do notice improvement relatively quickly. To get back to your question, it
Mhm.
doesn't take 6 months for
Okay.
people to resolve a problem. When you're doing things the right way, the human body is so fantastically resilient and able to heal and repair.
Mhm.
It's jaw-dropping. You just have to do the right things the right way.
Got it. Okay. So do you work with people that don't have pain that are just looking for, you talk about well-being through aging.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of work do you do with somebody that's like fine, but I want to continue to be fine as I age?
Yes, yes. So I did a survey years ago, and pretty much almost exactly 50% down the line, half the people come to me because they want to resolve pain. The
Okay.
other half come to me because they don't want to end up in a nursing home, like their uncle or their mom
Yeah.
or their neighbor.
Yeah.
And so there is so much that you can do. I've dove deep into the data on aging, and most of what we believe about aging is dead wrong. It's not true. I mean, I'm 67. I don't have pain. I'm not
What?
I'm not an anomaly. I'm not
Yeah.
an outlier. I don't even have Tylenol in my medicine chest. Yes, I teach movement, but I'm not at the gym 3 hours a day. And so the thing is, when you're feeding your body properly, when you're hydrating your body properly, and when you're training your body properly, age is really just a number.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop you. And I've worked with people over 100 years old and gotten them stronger by doing squats and parallel bars.
Oh, I love
So
that.
the human body on a cellular level is not designed to decline,
Hmm. That's not what we're
but
told.
that's not what we're told. The mainstream narrative is, oh, you are getting older, you know. What do you expect at your age? I mean, I had a conversation with somebody who was 35 not that long ago, and he said when he hit 30, all his friends told him it's all downhill from here.
All right.
Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I
Mhm.
mean, my husband is almost 70. He's a package handler at FedEx.
Wow.
He's throwing boxes around for hours and building walls in big trucks and he's got coworkers who say, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this when I'm 40." And he looks at him and goes, "You know how old I am?"
So a little bit still in disbelief here. You said you're 67.
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Well,
I
I'm
would have
chemically
guessed.
dependent. My hair would be a lot lighter, a lot whiter
Okay.
if I didn't
Still,
color
your
it.
skin
Yes.
and your face. I mean, I would have guessed, upper 40s, maybe low 50s,
Yeah.
so kudos to you. You're doing
Yeah.
all the right things.
Yeah. Well, I'm not perfect. You don't have to be perfect. That's what I
Yeah.
tell people. And
Yeah.
and I actually work with people who stress about being perfect
Mm.
and they end up harming themselves because they're in that run from the bear mode all the time because they're afraid they're not doing everything perfect.
Yeah,
I
stress
got to
is a
make sure
killer.
I've got that perfect vinegar. I got to make sure I got that, they're majoring on the minors
Yes.
and they're all stressed out. So I'm like, take a breath. Just do the right things the right way 90% of the time, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm a registered nurse, but before that, I came from a pretty heavy yoga background. I was a ERYT 500 yoga teacher, if you know what that means. Doesn't mean much to me, but I was teaching yoga teacher training for a long time, and I was very specific on teaching proper body movements, proper body techniques. And man, I would get so much resistance from people that say, "Oh, I can do this. Look, it doesn't hurt my body." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, now you're young, but repetitively, you continue to do this. Eventually, you're gonna end up with a stress-related injury. It's just how that
Mm-hmm.
works."
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like
Yeah.
you're taking that to the next level.
Yeah.
And
Because that same thing happens in the gym.
yeah,
People are
yeah.
doing the isolated motions,
Hmm.
and eventually, over time, the structures get stressed enough where they start to show some injury. Yeah.
Yeah, even something simple like, lifting the arm above the height of the shoulder without turning the palm upwards
Mm-hmm.
causes damage in your shoulder. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's something that's never
Yeah. And that's
taught.
because you're impinging and over
Right.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that tendon gets impinged between the
Mm-hmm.
acromion process and the head of the
Mm-hmm.
humerus. But we're never taught that, even in school, gymnastics, anything, not
Yeah.
gymnastics, in gym class, how bad that is. I remember as a young kid running around acting like a bird, moving my arms up and down like that all the time with my palms down. And I'm thinking, oh man, I was 5 years old damaging my shoulder that early.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a little caveat to that. Well, yes, that's really important. If somebody's going to constantly cross the 90-degree mark.
Hmm.
But once you're up over the 90-degree mark, you're kind of home free.
Yeah.
And if you don't get to the 90-degree mark, it's okay as well. It's the constant this.
Yes.
However, sometimes the impingement injury happens because of the muscles not moving the joints correctly,
Hmm.
and that space gets decreased. That acromial space actually decreases. And you'll get a lot of people who maybe 40s, 50s, 60s, oh yeah, I got a shoulder impingement. And and they want to blame it on age, and all
Hmm.
that stuff.
Of course.
And I'm like, well, age has nothing to do with it. We have to figure out, why did that space decrease?
Hmm.
What's going on with the shoulder girdle? What's going on with the trunk? What's restricted in its movement that's causing that space to be decreased, so that when you do go to lift your arm, even with the palm up, there's an impingement happening.
Yes.
So, but and I tell them, I say, and then somebody will say, "Oh yeah, the doctor said that, it's just how I'm made. It's how I was born or something." I say, "Well, that's funny, because you didn't have an impingement when you were in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, but now that you're in your 50s, you were born with it." So
Yeah.
we kind of have to, let's use some logic here. Just like the people who
Absolutely.
try to say, yeah, they come in with a total knee replacement. And yeah, the doctor said it was wear and tear. I'm on my feet for my profession, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, how's the other knee? And a lot of the times they'll say, oh, the other knee's okay. Not always, but sometimes they will. And I'll say, huh, so were you hopping around on one leg all your life? Because if it's wear and tear and it's old age, why haven't both of them gone?
Good
Why
point.
haven't all of them gone? Why are the people out there in their 90s or even over 100 who've never replaced a joint?
Hmm.
So we have to be logical here. The Stanford University School of Medicine did a study. The number one cause of joint damage is chronic inflammation. It has nothing to do with age, gravity, or wear and tear.
And that has a lot to
Oh,
do with our diet. So,
absolutely. Food promotes inflammation or fights inflammation. There's no neutral food.
yeah. So I want to go back to what you talked about happening on a cellular level that
Hmm.
we don't necessarily have to degenerate as we age.
Yes.
I listen to Joe Dispenza a lot and I love his
Hmm.
work and what he's doing. And he says that, if you get into the right space and have the right beliefs, that your body can produce anything to produce any type of outcome. So they
Hmm.
take people with chronic disease and they
Hmm.
have them meditate and change their internal chemistry through
Hmm.
belief and outlook. And I mean, that's fascinating if you think about it. I mean, that's
Yes.
like saying our minds are creating this degenerative process because of the way we think and the way we believe. And if we can change those thoughts, if we can change our mind, if we change our subconscious, then we can change the entire aging process. Can you
Yes. Oh, I
speak about
love that. I want to hug you right now. So, so my book, Aging Culprits, chapter one, is
that? Yeah.
all about mindset and belief systems.
Okay.
Because if we have swallowed the mainstream narrative that we're supposed to decline,
Hmm.
every single action, choice, decision, lifestyle that we perform is going to be based on what we believe.
Yeah.
So we're going to stop exercising. We're going to stop doing things. We're going to, we're going to make all of our choices based on the fact that there's nothing we can do about it. It's inevitable, and I might as well just enjoy myself now while I can.
Yeah.
So, and then you're going to trust the pharmaceutical company, or industry, I should say, to keep you together until you go below ground.
Yeah.
So, not a good choice at all.
And it's such a
So,
common choice.
I
I
know.
mean,
But
people
that's
our
because
age,
that's what people are fed.
yeah, yeah,
That's all you see: magazines, newspapers,
mhm,
books.
yeah,
You go to a healthcare office. That's what you hear constantly. What do you expect at your age?
right,
It's insane.
yeah,
So, here's what I tell people. You have to first reject the lies.
hmm,
You've got to reject the lies, because they are lies from the pit of hell. You are not designed to just decline and need disposable underwear, have horrific joint pain, lose your muscle power, and lose your independence, and end up in a nursing home if you live long enough. It is not the truth.
I
And the
agree.
same thing with bone density. They've got people terrified that they're going to break a hip, end up in a nursing home, and die within a year. I've worked in nursing home settings for a decade. Here's the truth about that. I've seen people come into the nursing home who broke their hip because they needed some rehab because they lived alone and they couldn't take care of themselves until they healed. But then they went home and rejoined their independent life. I've also seen people who broke the hip and came in and they did die within a year. But you know what? They were already on 12 different medications. They had a laundry list of diagnoses,
Yeah,
and they were just being medically managed. They
yes,
would have died in a year anyway.
yeah,
it had nothing to do with the broken hip.
Hmm.
Maybe that was like the needle that broke the camel's back, or the straw, however you want to say that, because now they're bed bound, which is going to increase the risk of everything.
Right.
But that had nothing to do, people get terrified by medical professionals who are well-meaning but misinformed.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to take this med because if you don't, if you break a hip, you'll end up in a nursing home, you'll die in a year.
Yeah.
And they're well-meaning, but they're misinformed.
Totally.
It's this error of attribution. So it's, I want people to be empowered. I want them to know the truth. I don't want them to be afraid of adding another candle to their birthday cake
Hmm.
because they think the future sucks.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's not true.
It is so crazy. I do in-home nursing care. I work with different people all the time, and I can't tell you how many people have gotten onto hospice. Hospice takes away their drugs. They say, no, no, you're not taking these drugs anymore. And then miraculously, they start to get better. And after a while, all of a sudden, hospice is like, oh, you're no longer a candidate for
They get
hospice.
fired from hospice. I know. Is that not fabulous or what?
It is,
Yeah.
but I mean, how bad
Yeah.
did these drugs make these people in the first place that they had to get onto
Yeah.
hospice?
I mean, I can share a story about my dad. He was on 14 meds and three
Wow.
breathing treatments a day. And he married a lot of women, not all at the same time, but one after another. And the current wife had left him. And I got a call that he was in trouble because he was homebound. He had broken his ankle and he wasn't really good. And he had like 35 steps to enter his back door. And so he was kind of homebound. He was legally blind. And so he couldn't really read labels on his medications. And so I got a call he was in trouble. So I go quickly to see him. And he's got meds all over the place, kitchen sink, bathroom. He doesn't know what he's taking. And so I have to call his doctor to figure it out. And of course, they wouldn't tell me because legally,
Yeah.
so I had to call my home care office and have a nurse come in. And now, of course, now they can tell the nurse, and we had to straighten that all out. But I'm like, what are you doing on all these meds? Now, the wife that left was a smoker. So once he was out of the smoke environment, because we moved him into a new apartment, he no longer needed the breathing treatments. Go figure.
Amazing.
And then I worked with his doctor, who I adored. His doctor was a doctor at the VA, and a lot of people pick on the VA.
Hmm.
Some of those doctors are some of the best doctors I've ever met. They are fantastic people. And he spent 45 minutes with me going over all of my dad's meds, some of which he had not prescribed because my dad loved to go visit doctors. It was his social life. And so he was like, well, no, he doesn't need this one. And then why are you on this one? And then he'd say, well, if you don't, you can stop this one. And if there's no symptoms, you can stop this one after that. And we just got rid of everything except for the blood thinners. And then he had an emergency GI bleed that required surgery. So we got rid of the blood thinner too. He lived another 10 years of quality life off the meds. I don't
Fabulous.
think he would have survived a year if he'd have stayed on them.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to my father-in-law. They put him on a cholesterol medication recently, and I was sharing with him the studies about cholesterol and how it all came about with these levels that they just made up just to get people on the drug. And he said, "Yeah, well, my doctor said I can eat anything I want, not have to worry about it." So, like, okay.
Yeah. So the data on the statins is that they will reduce the person's risk of a heart attack or a stroke or an event by 1.7%. And
Mm,
that's, I won't name the name, but that's the number one statin med in the globe.
yeah.
So 1.7% is the reduction, but they play with the numbers. They do relative risk instead of absolute risk.
Yeah.
So they make it sound like, oh, we're going to reduce your risk by like 40% because they play
Yeah.
with the numbers.
Yeah.
If ever you see that relative risk, they played with the numbers because it didn't really work.
Hmm.
And you got people dying from heart attacks and strokes who have great blood work
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the blood work has been medically manipulated.
Hmm.
And the doctor says, keep doing what you're doing. Your blood work looks great. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who drop dead within 6 months of being told they're fine
Yeah. It's crazy.
because they got this false sense of security that the medication is doing its job, but they're not changing how they feed their body.
Right.
And it's the
Well, if you're told you
food,
can eat anything you want, the medication's going to keep you
right?
safe.
Right. It's the food that's doing the damage. You've got
Yeah.
these little cells that line all your blood vessels, and those little cells get damaged by certain foods.
Yeah.
And the medications it's just manipulating that, but it's not fixing it.
Right. Right. So you're obviously not doing work online, I assume? Like,
I do all my work is online at this point.
oh,
I'm not in a
okay.
clinic setting. I haven't been in a clinic setting since the world shut down.
Okay.
So Yeah.
All right, fabulous. Because it sounded like, with what you're doing with the assessment and the movement that you would need to
Yeah.
be in
Oh, I
place.
can do that over Zoom. I've been
Perfect.
doing that actually long before the world shut down. I've been working with people all over the world, Australia, Israel, Germany, I mean, everywhere. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to learn German because I was just in Munich last fall and I love that. My mom's dad was from Germany. So, and then my mom's mom was from Ireland and I'm going to Ireland this fall. So,
Beautiful.
but, but yeah, I've been working with people. Now people know how to use Zoom. So my job's gotten easier. But I can just, as long as I can see them and hear them and they can watch me, I can demonstrate the movements, I can observe the movements. But I do have online programs where people can learn, with a lot less hassle with having to schedule with me one on one.
Hmm.
And I've got a free membership where they can do their own assessment and they can get introduced to the movements with a workout with about six of the movements that will teach them how to train in three plane function. So I've got a YouTube channel with tons of exercises taught with all different areas of problems that people have, like why does my back hurt when I sit, or why does my neck hurt when I walk, those kind
Yeah.
of things. So yeah, there's a lot out there online. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to delve into it. Um, you mentioned sitting. It blows my mind that most people have no idea how to sit properly. Again, that's one of
Mm.
those things that's like never taught. Simple anatomy of sitting. It's like blows my mind.
Yeah, and I teach people how to mobilize their pelvis if they're stuck on a plane and they can't get up.
Hmm.
You got to mobilize it. You can't just sit there.
Yep.
And yeah, and you got to mobilize it in three planes, which is real. I just taught that woman that earlier today because well, we're trying to abolish a derangement, and so she's got to make sure she doesn't let that low back round out in sitting for any length of time.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting for more than 20 minutes, you're almost always going to start to give into gravity and you're going to round out that back. I don't
For
care
sure.
if you got, this chair my son gifted me. This chair should write my content for me because it was so expensive. It's amazing. I love the chair, but if I sit long enough, I got to get up. You got to get
Sure.
up. Do
Yeah.
some hip forward, do some chair squats, restore blood flow, fluid, get the body moving. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome.
Mhm.
All right, so I think we're getting close to the end of the hour, I would assume. I'm not actually watching a clock, but I just want to give you the opportunity to share any information with our listeners and viewers that you haven't already.
Hmm. Oh my gosh. Well, I could talk for hours. So I think the most important thing for people to understand is if they do have chronic pain, if they do have an issue, and nothing they've tried has worked, it's probably because where the pain is not where the cause is. And if they've been seen as a body part, the person who's working with them is going to be limited in how much they can help them. They need to find somebody who sees them as a whole body. Absolutely. That's critical. And the last thing I would like to share that I think is very important to know as well is if somebody's recommending something, you really want to find out, it doesn't matter if they're a medical expert, if they've written best-selling books, if they, have 4 million subscribers on their YouTube channel, find out how long they've been doing what they're doing and how many people have they helped. That really is what matters most. When I got my nutrition educator diploma, I studied under people who were in the medical profession who had been getting people off meds, reversing disease, and restoring their lives. And they've been doing it for 30, 40 years. So what they recommend works.
Yeah. Are you
There's a
doing
lot of
nutritional
books out
counseling
there
as
that teach
well?
a lot of junk.
Oh,
So
for sure. I agree. Are you doing nutritional counseling as well?
I do. I am trained to do the health consultations. Yes.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
awesome. So you're
Yeah.
like a full package.
It goes to show how old I am.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes, yes. I don't plan on ever retiring. So,
I
yeah,
love that. I've always felt the same way. I always
yeah.
want to be doing something, helping people. It's like if I
Hmm.
retire, it'll just be like a shift from helping people in one way to another.
Yeah, because you only retire when you don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah. So what's the base? You've got two books out. I'm assuming those are available on Amazon.
yes. Hmm. Yep.
Okay.
And I also have websites set up for both of them with a lot of extra resources that didn't fit in the book because the publisher said if the book is too thick, people won't read it.
Yep.
So a lot of information I wanted to put in the book is on the websites. And you don't have to buy the book to just go to the websites, painculprits.com, agingculprits.com, and you'll see a lot of resources.
I
But
love,
obviously, the book is not on, the website. They do kind of have to get the
yeah,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I love how you've provided so much information for free. Do you want to share your website name and
Sure.
keep it
So, well,
general?
I have 8 of them, but I think
Wow.
the most important one is probably the one that I set up. So if people aren't sure what to access that I offer, it's the main website. It's called havelifelongwellbeing.com because I want everybody to have lifelong well-being.
Perfect.
And there's a 5-question quiz that they can answer that takes literally 2 minutes, not even. And then that will aim them. It will provide a list or a page of resources that I offer, whether they're free or some are paid, that they can now look at. So if somebody's concerned about bone health or they're concerned about incontinence, I've got a program that resolves incontinence fully clothed and upright. No, no Kegels required. And so, there's a lot of stuff for aging and for pain, and that'll aim them in the right direction.
Excellent. I love the work that you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing and helping out so many people.
Thank you.
This has been a
Yes.
wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.